And before we go live, oh, we are on live. Good.
We are on live, Scott, all yours.
All mine. You're not even going to do the introduction, Suman. Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today. The topic, now, if you guys looked at the topic and you saw this topic about isms, you might wonder, what are we talking about? But it's pretty simple and straightforward. It's about the future. It's about our nation. It's about who we are. That's what we really want to talk about, and what this election will mean to all of us as we move forward. You know, President Trump said recently, and I don't always agree with President Trump, but I agreed with him on one thing. He said recently that this election is a stark choice between two very different visions of what America is and what it will be. And I couldn't agree more. I will make no pretense of being objective. I am partisan. I feel very strongly about these issues, but I will try to be fair-minded as we host the discussion today. And I'm going to draw upon a wonderful group of panelists who are going to offer their thoughts, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this, but just by way of very brief background, I spent almost 40 years serving our nation. I was a career diplomat. I was a 3-time ambassador. I served for Republican presidents, and I served for presidents of the Democratic Party. And I was honored to serve them all, because throughout it, I didn't serve them as individuals, I served America. And I believed in the course of that service that we stood for certain values that mattered, that shaped how we engaged the world and how we saw the world. We cared about individual rights. We cared about human rights. We cared about basic decency. We believed people's voices should be heard, that they should all be active members and be able to shape their future, no matter their color, no matter their gender, no matter who they love, no matter what. That's what we believed, and that's what we fought for. And I saw how powerful the values that were embodied in our founding documents were, and how much they resonated in many countries where people did not enjoy those same liberties. Today, I think some of these values are once again on the table as we move forward into the election season. We saw what's been happening. We have seen what has been happening in our country. And of course, it's odd in some ways for me to be talking about this. I'm an old white guy. Yeah, I'm one of the beneficiaries of white privilege in many ways, and I know that. But we all have had a fundamental reawakening, if you will, or an awakening over the past months again, as we look at how much we have yet to do to really achieve the dream that our founders had for our nation. At least that's my perspective. That's why this election is going to matter, because I think there are two fundamentally different visions at stake here. But I'm not going to talk any longer. I'm going to turn it over to our colleagues. I'm going to ask our panelists to offer maybe 5 or 6 minutes each initially on what they see as the stakes in this election. But not only what the stakes are, what the differences would be depending on the outcome, but what we should do as a nation moving forward, what they believe our priorities should be as we look at issues of racism, of social and economic justice, of realizing the dream that we all have for our nation. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to some of our colleagues. And I would like to start with our delegate, Dolores McQuinn, who is a member of the Virginia House of Delegates since 2009 from Henrico County and the city of Richmond. She served in the City Council of Richmond and was also the vice chair of Richmond School Board, a task that you're probably happy not to have at the moment as you're dealing with COVID, I would guess. She's the chair of the Transportation Committee and serves on a number of committees, but tonight, I think she just wants to speak to us from the heart. So Dolores, could I turn this over to you? Dolores, I think you're muted.
Unmute, Ms. McQueen, can you unmute yourself?
Good evening. I forgot one simple thing to do. That was to unmute, right? Good evening. Thank you, Ambassador and Suman. It's good to see you, and to each of those who will be, each of the panelists. I'm delighted to be serving with you tonight, and I think to talk about some very important issues that are facing our nation. You know, this have forced me to go back over and over again, just the dynamics of the time, to the preamble to the Constitution. And I just want to quote what it says, and I'm not sure that everybody's very familiar with it, but it says that we, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for a common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish the Constitution of the United States of America. What I want to say in terms of, as I read this, and as it have been very much a part of who I am over the years, democracy is at stake here. Democracy has been threatened. And over the years, even though there's not been, we have worked toward a more perfect union. We have strived for that. But what I have found out in the last few years, that even though we have not fully arrived, we have tried to usher in generation after generation so that they understand the importance of what we are striving for. And when I look at what has occurred and what is happening, particularly in DC, I am somewhat taken back, because I realize that the freedoms that we have had, the justice that we have promoted, the general welfare of the lives of those who are citizens of America, all of those things are threatened. They are threatened when we have three branches of government.
You're muted again.
Dolores, you want to mute again.
Okay, I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. With the three branches of government, the judicial, the executive, and the legislative. The judicial is being threatened by our president as he pushed toward controlling the judicial system, not for the purpose of serving those citizens across this nation, but for himself, to see if there could be someone that would rule in favor of those things that would be contrary to the majority of those citizens in this nation. When you look at that, the executive has been mishandled and abused. And when I have experienced, to me, some of the most challenging times that I have realized in my life, as I have looked at and had to live through the Charlottesville experience, live through the issues that have come up as a result to race relationships. It is just one thing after another. What democracy looks like, or used to look like, it doesn't look that way any longer in America. And when we have efforts are being made to alienate based on race, based on sexual orientation, based on gender, then there is a problem. When we tend to alienate our friends of other foreign powers and embrace those who are in many ways our foes, embrace them and consider them strong men, then we have a problem in terms of protecting democracy. And finally, when I look at the legislative branch, they have basically been neutered through intimidation. The Senate will not push back to protect democracy. They will, to bring balance to government. And I look at that, I look at what has occurred with COVID-19, and I realize that if there's anything at stake as in terms of this election, it is democracy.
Thank you very much, Dolores. And we're going to come back to some of these ideas that you've advanced as we go on through the evening. I know one of our other delegates is still on the road. He is still driving. He's listening in, and we're grateful for that. But we're going to leave him, give him a chance to get parked safely and behind a camera, or in front of a camera first, I think. So I'm going to turn to Depisha KC for a moment, who's a student in Reynoldsburg, Ohio. The bio says she strongly believes in social activism. She's been involved and engaged in community organization, but more than anything else, it's so important that the voice of young people is heard today.
Yes.
These
Yes.
challenges that we face, hey, I'm not going to be around all that much longer, but for the young people in this nation, these are your challenges. This is your future that is at stake. So delighted to have you with us. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I am so thrilled to be here, and I'm honored that you guys have chosen me to be one of the panelists. And I hope that I'm representing the youth well, and I hope that I'm representing the city of Reynoldsburg well. But just to give you a little bit more context about who I am, I'm 17. I'm a high school student, and I'm also the founder of March for Justice Reynoldsburg. I've organized Black Lives Matter protests all throughout the summer, and I've also helped pass an ordinance to have a civilian review board in our city. Other than that, I'm mortified with the state of our country. I moved here just after Obama was president, and for the last 4 years since Trump's election, there's been a huge difference socially about how people treat me, how people treat people of color and different races. People have this newfound confidence in racism, sexism, homophobia, xenophobia, and so many other things. And I think seeing the president condone all of these horrific and hateful things has made people feel that it's okay and that it's correct to be these things. And they're even like proud that they connect with the president in this way. And like in the past 4 years, there's been like a huge shift in what it means to be an American. I think before it was this relatively like positive connotation to be an American. It was something that I would be genuinely proud of, to be like, yo, I'm an American over here. But in the past 4 years, I feel like now it holds like a vulgar and negative connotation, and that's what I'm scared of. That is what I think is at stake in this election, is what it means to be an American, what it means for the country to be America. Our reproductive rights as women are at stake. Our rights for LGBTQ plus community is at stake. Human rights is at stake, just period, point blank. I'm an immigrant, and there's this whole conversation about coming here legally and being a legal immigrant. And there's a process that we have to go through. I went through the process, and me and my mom were lucky enough to be able to come to the States legally, and we hold our citizenship, and that's something I'm proud of. But so many people don't have that opportunity. I haven't seen my dad in 12 years. We've been going through the legal channels to get him here legally, and it's not possible. It's just not working for us, and it's not working for so many other people. So to alienate these people who are trying to escape a life of violence, abuse, and to find a place to have a home, and we're telling them that they're not allowed here, no one is legal on stolen land. That's not how this works. We as a nation have so many resources to help other people. And I feel for like the last 4 years, we've been telling people, no, these are just for us. We are number one, and we are refusing to share what we have. And that's what I'm scared of. I don't want to be a part of a nation that will not help others when we clearly have the resources to do so. I want to be a part of a nation that helps others build. There shouldn't be this competition of being number one. We should all be helping each other to reach to the level where we're all happy, whether it's through the economy, whether it's giving everybody their human rights, stopping these pointless wars. And I think with Trump's presidency continuing on, his campaign is run on division of people. And we can't have a unification of a nation with that. And I think it doesn't have anything to do with whether if you're on the left or the right, and it has everything to do with becoming the United States. I don't think we're united now. And I think the last 4 years has been a clear indication of that. And I hope that we make the right decision this election, because I can't vote, and a lot of us cannot vote, but we still want our voices to be heard.
And you can be a powerful voice, and you can influence others, and I hope you will. And again, you too have raised some topics that I think we'd love to come back to. Yeah, I just have to say though that having been ambassador in Nepal, I can remember sitting with the Bhutanese refugee community and talking to groups of refugees as they prepared to come to our nation and telling them about the hope and the opportunity and what our nation stood for. And it was true. And I want to believe that is still true today. And I understand why you are feeling alienated and frustrated and maybe not proud when you hear when you say you're an American. But the values that define us are still worth standing for. And we're going to get back to that, I hope. So thank you, Nipisha. Now, we are going to turn, because I think our delegate is still, I don't see him behind the camera yet, so he's still driving. So we're going to turn to Dr. Barsha Mokhtan, pediatric dentist in King of Prussia, Pennsylvania. But as you can see, we come from all different walks of life, all different interests, but we all care about the future. We all care about making a difference. And I know, Doctor, you are one of those who cares deeply about these subjects. So please, if you'd share your thoughts with us. You're muted as well. I think. You're not muted, but we're not hearing you through your mic.
Can you hear me now?
I
I'm
can
just
hear you now.
okay.
That's great.
All right. Maybe it's my headphones, they weren't working. Okay. Thank you so much. It's really an honor to be here today. I would like to thank Ambassador and Suman Uncle for inviting me. And it's really an honor to be amongst such distinguished panelists. And I'm so impressed by Dipisha as well. And she, in such a young age, you know, she's so passionate about this topic. It's really, really, really impressive. And, you know, she's only 17 and she's definitely ready to vote next year. You're really an inspiration for a lot of youths. So can you guys hear me properly?
Yes,
Yeah.
we hear you
Okay.
fine.
All right, great. Okay. So, I mean, we all know that this election will determine every facet of American life. United States has never been so divided and polarized. We are in need of United States now more than ever. And we all, you know, a lot of us, well, most of us here are immigrants. Everybody who came to America is an immigrant. You know, it started in the 1600s and there's just waves and waves of immigration that's happening. Other than the Native Americans here, everyone is an immigrant. Everyone has an immigrant story. It's just about what generation you are from. And we all came here because America is the land of opportunity. And more than that, it's the land where you can get freedom. But like, you know, I couldn't agree with Delegate Dolores more than, you know, what she said. Our democracy is at stake here. Our freedom is at stake. I mean, let's talk about this. We're a few weeks away from the election and the Trump administration is trying to nominate Amy Coney Barrett for the position to replace late RBG. And it's not about who he's nominating, and it's not about the fact that, you know, Amy Coney Barrett is the ideologic opposite of who RBG was. It's about the fact that we're so close to the election and, you know, like we're trying to nominate someone few days before the election. How does that represent us? And how does that represent Americans? What people want? So that really shows that our democracy is at stake, especially when there's so many issues at stake right now, such as immigration. Our immigration laws are getting stricter and stricter. And in the past 4 years, it has changed a lot. And, you know, Dipisha shared her own personal story about her dad. There's so many people like that. And, you know, these are immigrants who have worked for this country, who've served this country, paid taxes here, and are not entitled to get citizenship. And other than that, we're talking about Affordable Care Act. Affordable Care Act is at stake. There are millions of people who rely on Affordable Care Act, millions of, you know, women with, people with pre-existing conditions, women with pregnancy issues, or even college students who cannot afford insurance otherwise. So, you know, there's so much at stake here. Other than Affordable Care Act, we're talking about, you know, always pro-life versus pro-choice, women's right, you know, just gender and sexuality, and so many issues at stake here. This election can really turn the face of America. We're really looking at so many changes here. In the past 4 years, America holds such a central position in the global system. And right now, with someone who is, we have someone, you always say that your leader represents you. So your leader is who the people are. So if your leader is saying that, hey, it's okay to call out names to women and say names and mock them, make fun of them, and we're talking about women in power. Powerful women are being mocked and made fun of. So imagine other women. How are they supposed to advocate for themselves when these powerful women are being mocked and it's normal and it's acceptable? So it's just changing what America was, and we're really changing the identity of America in front of the world. So I think it's time. You can, I read somewhere, you can only hold your breath for so long. And I think we've all held our breath for 4 years. And I think another 4 years would be too much. So I think it's time that, we really realize that, we're not, instead of focusing on our differences, we really have to find a common ground and get together and be united. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Barsha. And I don't know, Ibrahim, I know you're still on the road. Are you, wait, he's been able to come on. That's good. It's good to see you. We welcome you on the chat and on the video at this point. Ibrahim Samira is a delegate, state delegate from resident of Herndon, Virginia, and the youngest elected delegate in the state of Virginia. Is that correct?
That is correct.
You look very youthful. That's very good. I had mentioned, I think before you joined the call, I just hope you are going to do an exceptionally good job, because my daughter, son-in-law, and 3 precious grandchildren all live in Herndon. So please take good care of them. So Ibrahim, you've heard the discussion so far. Please, why don't you join in and share your views?
Well, thank you, Ambassador Scott, and hello to everybody. Thank you so much for having me. Saman, thank you for organizing this, and to the wider community that's watching, thank you for joining us. There's so much at stake in this election, as you've heard from many of my wonderful co-panelists today. And I'm excited to share from my perspective how we look at ism. I think to go back to that very notion that we were talking about a little bit earlier. So let's to quickly define what we mean by ism. It's the othering. It's saying that somebody else is a problem or is lesser than you, and so they must be the issue at hand that causes so much problem for you personally. It takes different forms in many different places and many different times. I think for a lot of folks on that are watching today, there's a lot of international perspectives that come to play in how you view yourself, even as an American or as a resident of the United States. And I want to bring that full circle for everybody here today. There are a lot of discriminations that happen abroad in our home countries that many of us attribute ourselves to. I know my parents, for example, are originally coming from Jordan. They were born and raised there, but they're originally Palestinian refugees. And so they come from a very political environment where they've dealt with a lot of issues growing up as a result of being a discriminated against entity that cannot live freely. And that carries on with them into the United States. Like Ms. Dabisha, my father as well is still to this very day has problems coming to the United States. This is as an elected official, as somebody who represents 85,000 citizens, of course, large majority of which are American, myself being American, and we still have problems even for my own family till this very day. And that's as a result of a lot of isms. And those are isms that people don't necessarily recognize in their everyday life. They're busy with putting food on the table, getting health care, being able to sponsor education for their child now and in the future. There's problems with needing for childcare, finding somebody to take care of your kids when you're at work, and so many of the things that have to do with also affordability, dealing with those issues, things like housing. We have a big problem in Herndon, for example, about finding a place to live that's less than $1,800, $1,800 each month for rent. So all these problems, how are they related to isms? How are they related to discrimination against one person, against one entity, one group? Well, there are structures that get put in place on a local level where you live here in the United States that make it harder for you to live a good life for many reasons. But at the top of the ladder is greed, is a need for more by those that make a lot of money. Because at the end of the day, they thrive off of being able to have layers and castes, as many people may know in South Asia, where you come from a certain level, everybody else below you needs to stay below you, and everybody above you needs to stay above you. And it's a pyramid structure that's not very friendly to people who need help the most. And it's the same thing that happens here in the United States. There are people who are more influential and they get more benefits as a result of that. And this is a direct result, again, of preferencing, of people preferencing one group over another. In the United States, we have a long history of those that were of white backgrounds finding a way to the upper spheres, upper levels of American society. And it's not the fault of any particular person. Again, it's the fault of a system. And that system is your system. At the end of the day, it's you that decide how the system works. In a democracy, unlike a lot of other places in the world that many immigrants come from, this is a society where if you participate in the political process, you will get what you want out of it by the end of the day. What the end of the day is exactly unknown. We have many communities that have been struggling for hundreds of years here in this land called the United States today, a land of immigrants to start with. But again, at the end of the day, there's a lot of struggle as to who is benefiting the most. So myself and my colleague, Delegate Dolores McQuinn here, we work hard on making sure in Virginia, at our level, at the state level, where we are elected to represent, that we fight for all people. So why? Because at the end of the day, it's our firm belief that if we benefit people on the margins, then everybody is at benefit. And many of you on this call today are people who are on the margins. You might not notice it yourself because you think that, well, hard work is supposed to be the only way that you succeed in life. Yes, many of you work very hard. Many of you work 70, 80 hours a week when you shouldn't be. Some people have to work 40 hours for the same kind of compensation, the same exact job that you work. And you might know some people at work that do exactly that. So how do we stop this? Well, we have to remember that these international issues that we may be thinking of more deeply because of our connection to the world abroad, outside of the United States, are issues here at home. When we go to war in Iraq and Afghanistan, we spend trillions of dollars on war, trillions of dollars that could be used to make your water clean here in the United States, that can be made to use in making education for free like it is in other industrial nations, to guarantee healthcare for everybody, where you don't have to fear that you might die one day because you have to do a job that makes you very tired and takes away from your life and your ability to remove stress. There's so many factors that play in that relate to how we deal abroad. So I want to be able to bring your perspective from Nepal, from India, from Pakistan, from wherever you are in South Asia that you're listening, to bring that here to the United States, because those problems that people are facing abroad are issues that you're facing here at home as well. And that interconnection should inspire you to be involved in the politics of your locality, of your area. We have a council member, Pradeep Dakal, he was on with us earlier, who's from Herndon as well, who is somebody who works with me to help the people of Herndon in a very local level. What does Herndon mean? Well, Herndon means to us the politics that we aspire our community to live by. And there's a saying in American politics that says, all politics is local. And what that really means is that if you focus on your locality, if you focus on where you live, and you try to make as much impact, positive impact as possible there, you will actually be able to trickle it up. So when Council Member Pradeep at the Herndon Town Council does really good work for people on the margins, I, as their state representative, who's a little bit higher in the government ladder, take notice of that. And I want to be able to use that to be benefiting the same people that he's working for, but on a bigger scale. I'm at the state level. I work to help 8.5 million Virginians. And when I do that, and when Delegate Dolores McQuinn is doing that as well, we end up getting noticed by people who represent us at the federal level, who represent possibly 850,000 people. And guess who?
I'm going to interrupt for just a second here, because in the interest of time, because I know you've got a lot to say and to share here.
Well, let me drive the point home. It all trickles up to the national level. And you care about a lot of national politics. You might care about what Trump is doing to Nepal. You might care about what Trump is doing to India. Those are all issues that stem from the local level, okay? And if you want to fight discrimination, you want to fight against harm against you and your family abroad, it starts at home. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So one thing's pretty clear here, right? I think that none of our panelists are necessarily going to be supporting the Trump candidacy. And that's okay. And I think you all see some dramatic challenges facing our nation that you believe, and I share your belief. I'll be honest, that these challenges will only get worse if the president is reelected. That's the view that this particular group holds. And that's okay. There are those, though, in our country who see it differently, and we know that. There are fellow citizens. They're the same people that you represent in the state legislature. You don't represent just the folks who share your views. We represent all the people in our nation. There are many folks I know who are concerned. They're worried that it's going to get crazy. We're going to do all sorts of stupid things in the name of climate change, in the name of equality, and then they're going to be marginalized. Yeah, we've all heard it. I understand that there are legitimate, understandable concerns that people have. So my question for you is, moving forward, if this election brings the change that you seek, how do we manage that change in a way that really brings us back to a truly inclusive society where we talk to each other with respect, where we listen to differing views, and we try to find our way forward together? That's the first part of the question. The other thing I'd throw out for your consideration, and then we'll open this up a little bit, is you've highlighted some of the real concerns that you have about what will be the problem if the election goes a different way. And we've talked about reproductive rights. You didn't mention climate change, but we know that that's out there too. We've talked about healthcare. We've talked about racism and social equality and economic justice. We see Americans who are at food banks for the first times in their lives, who are struggling to get by. We know that there is a fundamental problem. And President Trump did not cause all these problems. COVID did not cause all these problems, but both have cast a sharp, sharp light on these divisions and schisms within our society and these problems that we have to address. But with this long list of problems, what do we prioritize? What would you see going forward as the things that we need to address? And I'm going to throw this open to your comments, any and all of you. And we'll spend about maybe 10 minutes or so talking about this, 10, 12 minutes. I think I see one question that has come in that Sumana sent me. So, but please, what do you all think? How do we bridge the gap? How do we move forward together? And what do we prioritize amongst all the challenges that you've identified?
I would love to hear from Depecia first.
I think
you have privileges by being 17.
No, but it's good. I'd like to hear from you too. What do you think is important? How do we do that?
First, to bridge the gap, that's like a cultural shock. Like these past 4 years and even before that, people have always been very like divisive. It's very like two-party system. So I think one, we don't need a two-party system, but that's a conversation for a whole nother time. But for what issues that I find most crucial, one is definitely climate change. We only have one planet. We have time to fix social issues and we have time to do better. But with the planet, we are on a timeline to the point where, like in New York City, there's quite literally a countdown of how much time we have to where we can fix what's happening globally before we don't have the time to fix it anymore. So number one on my personal list is climate change. I want to be able to be alive for a little bit longer. And I think the environment and the climate that I'm in is extremely important. So that would be number one. Number two is,
I would argue a very fundamental difference in approach to the climate change issues.
yeah.
And that's why the election matters, right? Elections have consequences. There are choices to be made. Thank you.
Absolutely. And then my like next categorical issue, I guess, is just human decency. I think in the last 4 years, we've had a huge thing with the 1964 Civil Rights Act, where the DOJ actually said that it does not prohibit discrimination on gender identity. So trans individuals have been put at a risk. And I don't think that's right. I don't think you should ever be put at a risk for who you are. And I think like more than that, like our reproductive rights as women have been put in jeopardy. So many just basic human rights have been put in jeopardy these past 4 years. So I think those are my two like big issues that I would like to focus on and prioritize first.
Thank you. Have any of the other panelists want to share their thoughts?
Yeah, and Mr. Ambassador, one of the things is I've looked at, and I've had, Pisha, I want to tell you, I started when I was 11 years old, knocking on doors and campaigning for an individual who became one of the first African-American city council persons in Richmond. So I got you by a few years, so that one. But I think one of the important things for all of us to do as we look at, as we are on two different sides and many, as we look at the landscape of our nation, there are those who are on the left and those who are on the right, those who are on the far right and those who are maybe on the far left. But the bottom line is there must be a bridge that we can build from one side to the other. And building that bridge, we must find those who are willing to cross it so that we can begin to be certain that what we're shaping, it is going to benefit people like Depisha. It is going to benefit. I have 2 grandkids, and one is 2 years old and the other one is 6 years old. I spend probably most of my time now trying to determine, what do I want their future to look like? What do I want the environment in which they're living to be like? How do I want to shape, so whether I'm here with them or if I'm gone on, how do I want to shape the environment as a whole? So there are individuals who are on that bridge who are looking at all these multiplicity of issues that we are dealing with. I just think that we have long been separated by race, separated by gender, separated, economically. I mean, it is, and as an African-American and African-American woman, I've seen it all. But the bottom line is, how do we, those who are goodwill, those who believe in social justice and economic justice, and how do they begin to find that individual across the other side of the bridge and to see if they're willing to meet you halfway for the benefit of a brighter future, a better society, and a greater, our nation. And when I talk about democracy, I have never, ever in my life been afraid about what tomorrow is going to bring. If we don't make a change on the 3rd, I've already told my family I'm moving out of this nation, okay? And I'm serious. But if we don't make a change on the 3rd, I am so afraid, and I'm a woman of faith, but for the first time, I'm afraid of what tomorrow will bring. So we have got to build those bridges, and it's going to take some time because of how far, well, where we are now. There's been a lot of barriers and hindrance in the way. We have got to get folks across that bridge.
Thank you, Dolores. And I'll just say that I'm old enough to remember there was a time in our nation where those bridges existed,
Yes,
when
yes.
we could cross them and when we did work for the common good.
yes,
And the fact that even with a crisis like we see today of COVID, that we cannot find that common sense of working together to do what's right. When masks become a political symbol,
it's unbelievable.
and public health becomes about politics and not living together effectively in a society, it's a sad day. I hope we can get back there too, because it worries me as well. Some of our other colleagues.
I can comment next.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I mean, me being a healthcare provider, I'm very passionate about the Affordable Healthcare Act because, you know, I work with so many kids who need, like, for instance, you know, I work in dentistry, so who need dental work, but they cannot afford to get the treatment that they need. And it breaks my heart every day to see that, you know, like, these people who can get help are not getting the help they need. And with Affordable Care Act at stake, there's so many people, and especially with pre-existing conditions and, you know, or young college students who are not going to have health insurance. And that will really prevent them from basic human rights. I think getting healthcare is a human right, especially in a country like United States. So it would be, you know, it's something that I really think this election could change. And you know, that's why I'm really hoping that on November 3rd, things swing the right way. And other than that, and, you know, we talked about masks. Yes. I know you, Ambassador brought up masks, and, you know, it was absurd to see people protesting because they didn't want to wear masks. And it's, you know, just, you know, we're so selfish that, you know, we're talking about it's our body, it's our choice, and we should have a choice to wear masks. And then at the same time, and these are the people who always talk about pro-life versus pro-choice. A woman cannot have a choice to do whatever they want with their body, but at the same time, we want a choice. You know, we don't want to wear masks because it's our body, and we don't want to put on a mask that will help prevent spread of this pandemic. You know, masks have effectively proven time and again that COVID spread is controlling. You know, and we still don't want to go ahead and do that. So, and in terms of how we can effectively do it, I mean, we've fallen behind so much that there's a lot of catching up to do at this point. And I think, like Delegate Ibrahim mentioned, it all has to start at a local level. And I think that bridge needs to form starting at a local level. We all need to get involved. And hopefully we all, you know, November 3rd will come and we will all be on the safer side. And after that, all of us really need to get involved in our local communities and represent ourselves. And that's the only way we can bring change.
Thank you very much. Ibrahim, do you have any thoughts on this?
Well, my fellow dentist described a lot of things very well, as well as everybody else. You know, I do also see it from a doctor's lens as well. And specifically, I see improving public health as the central issue that is touching everything else. From housing affordability to women's empowerment to education to criminal justice. The ultimate goal should be to create healthier and happier and more efficient communities. And so working to build a coalition to do just that and make your local area, your state, in my case, Virginia, a better place for all is to do that by is to uplift everybody on the margins, as I mentioned earlier. And there's a lot of details there, but the way I like to look at it is, how can you help people live better lives? And so I run through specific categories of, and I think about it from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to sleep. You wake up and you need to have a good place that you slept at. So you must have affordable quality housing to start with. Then from there, you need to have enough money to put food on the table for yourself in the morning to eat. You need to have enough money to pay for the utilities, the electricity bill, the heat bill, the water bill. Then from there, you need a car, or maybe you don't need a car, hopefully, and you can just commute by having a bus next to you that stops by your house, something to take you to work, whatever it is, the metro station. You see where I'm going with this. There's a lot of basic necessities that you need to be as successful as you can be. And when you're successful, you as somebody who's, I guess most people that are watching today are Nepalese, you as a successful Nepalese person, you will then be able to have the kind of free time and the kind of energy that's required to be able to fight to bridge that divide that the ambassador is talking about. The divide needs to be bridged by a stable human being, somebody who's comfortable enough to be able to do so, but coming from a good place. And that place should be justice.
How do we encourage the local, and I think the points that you've made about local, everything begins at the local level. And as we look in the years ahead, not only the civil comity that we seek, but solving the problems that we face as a nation. Some of these are huge, and a lot of them will begin with solutions at the local level. The federal government won't be able to fix everything. So how do we encourage and how do we build those sorts of partnerships at the local level? And Ibrahim, I thought your point about thinking about what does it take to make people's lives better? That's hugely important. But for young people who aren't perhaps in the political process, but who are activists, what could they do and what should they be thinking of in terms of their engagement? We're telling folks, vote, for God's sake, vote. And that's great, but it's not just what we do every 4 years. It's how we engage throughout the cycle, right? You know, Dolores, you began at 11. I think that's pretty cool. But so what can we do to encourage that sort of participation, especially for those who maybe don't have faith in the system anymore?
Right.
Or who are unfamiliar with the system.
Yeah, I want to highlight Ms. Depisha's work because she's doing it at the local level.
Mhm.
At age of 17, she got a civilian review board ordinance passed. We can't even do that at the state level properly. So, you know, I see my colleague Delegate Dolores McQuinn also laughing because, you know, we have had so many problems convincing our colleagues to get it done, but a 17-year-old out in Ohio is doing it. So for folks that don't know what a civilian review board is, that means if a cop stops you in the middle of the road for no reason, you know, kicks you out of the car and throws you to the ground, like many people get the experience of as immigrants in this country, and you get treated really poorly, that means that that police officer has people just like you and I that will be able to hold that police officer accountable. And that's a really big deal because if the wrong police officer stops you in the middle of the road, you might be in prison for the rest of your life. And that might affect your life in such a big way. And that also happens to a lot of other people of color in this country. So it doesn't just stop at you. And that's how you begin to bridge divide using a very local environment, taking an issue that affects people on a local level, just like Ms. Depisha did. She took police accountability seriously. She saw that the police are doing things that they shouldn't be doing, that those few police officers that are doing the bad things should be not doing the things that they're doing, frankly speaking. And she took action. She probably built out a group of people or was part of a group of people that went to those local authorities and said, hey, we need to change this. And it all started with those people on the ground thinking out loud, how can I empower myself? So you pick the issue is what I'm getting at here. You pick that one issue that you're passionate about, that you care about very deeply. And you remember that that issue is interconnected, is connected to so many other big issues for people's lives. And you get that passion that you need to fight for that one issue as a big picture issue that results in so much effect on people's lives. You fight for that.
And are the four of you I'm just curious, as you're out there and you're active and you're speaking out and you're fighting for these things that you believe in that are so important. When you encounter folks who have a contrarian view, who see the world differently, and we know that, there are people who do. How is your dialogue? Are you able to have constructive conversations? And if so, how do you manage that process?
Mhm.
Who wants to jump in? I heard.
I usually, in particular, certainly we haven't had any probably this year, but certainly through town hall meetings and then knocking on doors, you have opportunity to meet those who don't have the same sort of ideology, who doesn't, in terms of their partisan politics or whatnot. I talk with them. I spend time and try to spend the time that I need to help them to understand my position and then listen in terms of understanding their position. I know we don't have much time, but I remember one town hall meeting that I had and was held, and there was a Republican who was at the meeting who didn't like what I was doing with gun control, didn't like my positions on it. But I had to share with him the fact that I came out of urban setting, the number of individuals, African American young people who were killed, the funerals that I had eulogized, and the funerals that I had attended. And after I finished sharing with him and talking and listening to him, he said to me, "You would be the first Democrat that I will vote for." And I thought that was interesting. So I think dialogue is going to be one of the main ways, again, getting on that bridge and trying to meet people in the center. Hopefully that will help to create a paradigm shift.
Thank you. Any other thoughts? Tapisha, Barsha?
I kind of want to jump in on the question before this one.
Please, go ahead.
Something that a lot of people talk about is youth involvement. We are the future. But so often, like growing up, I continuously get told that I'm the future and that like I'm this great voice, but nobody listens. Like we continuously tell youth that like, oh, you're gonna do this. But unless you have the type of determination to really just like keep yelling until somebody listens to you, it's not gonna happen. And we magically expect people to just start voting at the age of 18 without never educating them prior to it. We never educate high school students on what it means to be a good citizen, what it means to have civil duties. But somehow at 18, you're supposed to magically know what those things mean, and you're supposed to magically understand how to look at both sides of politics, and you're supposed to understand which side to pick. So I think for the future and going on with political involvement in local government, it's about educating the youth that they do have responsibilities, even if they are kids, to just simply educate themselves. And I think this also goes into bridging that gap. Is I've had amazing mentors who have taught me always to look at both sides, that there's always three sides to a story. It's never just the one that you're looking at. So I take the time to look at like Trump's policies versus Biden's policies, look at both of their pasts and what they've done, because the past is the best indicator of the future. And I take the time to learn those things so that when I do meet people who have a differing view, we can have a civil conversation. It's not a yelling match about you're wrong and I'm right. It's a conversation about you believe this and I believe this and this is why. It's about like having an understanding, which is something that I think we lack currently.
Thank you, Tapisha. And we're drawing close to the end of our time here. I would just note that I wrote today, was writing today about this issue of critical thinking, of taking responsibility and the danger, the tremendous danger inherent in allowing ourselves to just accept what we're told as this is the gospel and this is the truth, whether it's about the pandemic or anything else, that we have to be active, not just engaging in politics, but in learning and understanding and reading and thinking. To the panelists, I just want to say thank you for your views. Thank you for taking the time to share your thoughts. This is part of the process that we have to have in our nation. And listen, I know that there are probably those who are listening to us who do see things differently. who will vote differently, and that is okay.
Mhm.
And maybe it would have been best if we had had somebody who had a very strongly different view, but of course that would have made for a much different dialogue here. But what I would say and what I would urge all of our listeners, no matter what your views, you're entitled to them.
Yeah.
Act on them, vote. Let us have that discussion as a nation. Let us have that referendum as a nation and make our choice and move forward for the future. Like all of you, I think that we face grave challenges as a nation, and no matter who is in power, those challenges will remain. And it will require an informed and engaged citizenry to address them, and you are part of that. So thank you again for your participation. It was an honor to be with you tonight. And I know Suman wanted to have the last couple minutes, and I've saved him 2.5 minutes at least. So Suman, it's back to you, brother.
Thank you, Ambassador. You have always been there with us, and I intentionally didn't introduce him in the beginning because, and he has always been on our side for many years. Our friendship goes back over like 10 plus years, and I think this was a really good dialogue, and this is the time, and we couldn't ask for better panelists than what we have on the screen right now. From very young experience to lots of experience here, and I think that's the gap we have to fill in. And yes, and everyone bring like really unique stories in this forum. And all I have to say is that we got to really watch it, and this is what we believe in. The ism is kind of very dangerous, it's very poisonous. And we need to be really be very cautious about these isms, and from local community, if someone says it, just tell them that you got to tell them that's not right. You can't just swallow it and walk away from there. And I think that's the mistake many of us make it. If you don't stop it, that's going to keep happening. And that's up to us. That's up to individuals, and we have to stand up and just go out and vote the right candidate. And I'm just hoping that on November 3rd evening, we can breathe. I'll just go back to George Floyd. I think we can breathe after that. And I've said that, thank you so much. And I just want to we are doing this panel twice a week on different topics. And on election day, I know we are planning to do whole evening live coverage from this channel, and it's live on eNepli's Facebook. Thank you, Delegate McQueen. Thank you to Delegate Samira Barsha, Dipisha, and of Ambassador Scott DeLacy. Thank you so much, and have a good evening.
Thank you, Suman. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.